This is Morten from English TV, and we have Jean Lloyd, my co-host from South Africa.
Good morning.
Jean, you have brought another guest from South Africa into our Learn With Us session this morning. So, Luisa, welcome to Learn With Us, and wonderful to see beautiful ladies from South Africa this morning. Luisa, tell us a little bit who you are.
Hi, Morten. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Luisa Mazinter. I have been in the marketing and communications industry for more years than I'd like to admit on the internet.
At least you're honest, right?
And so I've been a CMO, I've been a Chief Innovation Officer, I've run my own business for many years. I've owned media businesses, my own website for the industry. So yes, I've been in the market for a while. Most recently, CMO of one of the first digital banks to be launched in the country, and now still working in the fintech space, looking at how to actually achieve objectives in times that are pretty tough.
But Louisa, you sit on quite a few boards though. I mean, I could sit for your next hour and just, I mean, you head of so many boards and you have judged worldwide, you know, with them when the US and DMA existed. I mean, you used to judge some of the awards there. India, I'd say, I laugh because Morten goes, you know, South African, but I think you sort of very international in the associations and the boards that you actually sit on. So yes, carry on, sorry.
So I sit on the MMA Mobile Marketing Association EMEA board, as well as the South African one, the DMA in India. And I do a lot of speaking and training because I love to accumulate knowledge and I love to share it.
Fantastic. I think that I mean the audience that English normally talks to is more for the PSPs and the printing industry. So when you talk about the industry, you talk about the DMA and the marketing side of the industry, yes. Right?
Yeah. Absolutely, the end users of your product.
Yeah,
so I think you know you deal with all the brands though. So I mean, you know what brands are looking for. You sit on boards of companies where you're dealing with brand owners on a daily basis. So I think the value adds there.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't help think about Luisa. This is, as far as I know, this is because of Jean that she has also said to me, we need to talk to publishers, we need to talk to marketing and agencies. And I really like that approach, even though that of course, this is a little bit unusual for our audience, but I have a leading question. I don't know what you will answer, but you can only say yes. I will ask you, do you think that the printing industry and the marketing industry should work close together in how to communicate and take advantage of the technologies available? Yes.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that you asked that, Morten, because that really is the underlying topic of my talk. So I'm going to be taking more of a broader overview of the industry as I understand it. I mean, this is basically a topic that's very close to my heart, but it consumes my every working hour. And hopefully it'll help to give you an insight on what's going through the minds and informing the decisions of some of the business leaders who use your services today. So yeah, hopefully there will be some nuggets that you can take out that you could potentially apply.
Sounds great. What do you think, Jean? Should we let Luisa take the center stage and we can just withdraw and then listen and learn?
Absolutely.
Okay, take it away. Jean and I will be there all the time. So if you need help or anything, you will just say help. And basically, when you finish with your presentation, I'm sure either audience or Jean and I will have some questions. So take it away.
Wonderful. Morten, one question. Can you see my slide?
Not yet, but let me click on that slide. I can see them now.
Right? There we go. Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So thank you, everybody. It's lovely to be here with you. I think the one thing we're all absolutely aware of is we're living through interesting times that are unprecedented, certainly in our lifetimes. We're living through a global pandemic. combined with civil unrest, widespread socioeconomic instability. And what it's done, it's reshaped our lives. It's reshaped the lives of your clients, their customers, their employees, as well as all businesses and operating landscapes worldwide. So I'm not going to even pretend to try and predict the future or do any scenario planning with any degree of accuracy, because that's hard to do in stable times, but it's really, really hard to do now. In fact, it's almost impossible, particularly because the traditional points of reference we've always used for strategic planning have simply flown out of the window. So with that context, hopefully what I'm going to share with you today is a perspective of the challenges that many businesses, specifically marketers, are facing today. And I'm hoping that that will help you to at least define a plan for your business, that it will spark some ideas around how you can transform and innovate in order to survive and hopefully thrive through these very challenging times. So I'm going to broadly cover three main areas. The one is I'm going to talk about the challenges that marketers are facing today, and the implications of that, you know, the risks, the opportunities that may have for your business. And then I'm going to end on some fun, some innovative approaches that you could potentially consider as you plan for the future. So with that in mind, let's dive in. So not such a great looking slide, but very, very interesting for us. We've come through some very tough times. Almost every business in the world has had to rethink and in many cases pivot completely just to survive since the pandemic started. The return on investment that as a marketer I'm constantly asked to deliver has been put under even more scrutiny and more pressure in boardrooms across the world. Marketing spend around the world has fallen anywhere between 15% to as much as 48% year on year. And the allocation of marketing budgets, and that what's left over after the budgets have been slashed, has also come under intense focus. So there's some really interesting and challenging and concerning new trends that have emerged, but you have to be able to evaluate the trends. You need to understand how consumer behavior has shifted and how certain changes have become habituated and are unlikely to go back. And I think one of the key things, and I loved that little video that Morten played at the beginning of the session, but I think the digitization of everything, which was foreseen many, many years ago, has certainly become our new reality. We work from home. We invariably dress from the waist up for our Zoom meetings or our team meetings. Cash has become something that has been sitting in my purse for months and I never really used. E-commerce has become our reality. And many businesses, both large and small, that have previously been offline businesses have had to zig and zag and pivot just in order to survive and adapt, and in some cases even flourish. And there are many amazing stories about businesses who have been able to flourish in this time. So if we look at where we were before COVID-19, the COVID-19 outbreak, 2020 was the year that global advertising spend was expected to grow by about 7.1%. Now, what we've actually seen, as you can see from this data, is that there's been a brutal contraction of more than 9%. And that equates to almost $50 billion that has not been spent in the advertising space as a result of the pandemic. And also, yeah, the changes that the pandemic has wrought on consumer behavior. Some believe actually that the loss has been even worse. So if we take the pre-pandemic growth forecasts into account, it's probably closer to 96, 98 billion that has not been spent in the year that the pandemic has been our reality. So what you see here is data from the World Advertising Research Center, or WARC, that shows how advertising has declined by media format and by industry. And we've always repeated that old saying that no one media format will ever destroy or kill another. But it does look now that after decades of experts predicting the death of traditional media formats, COVID could actually be the last nail in the coffin of certain formats. They will come back, but they won't come back quite at the rate that they experienced in pre-COVID times. In fact, yeah, as you can see, spend across every type of traditional media saw a decline in 2020. And that relates to every industry in the world. Almost every industry is going to be spending less as we come out of COVID. I think the only category that bucked the trend is, as you can see there, is the telecoms and utilities. So they experience about a 4.3% increase in ad spend throughout the year. So that has become our new reality. And this is just mirrored by the World Economic Forum paper that shows that as consumer behavior has shifted, advertising spend has had to adjust in response. It just doesn't make sense for advertisers to spend on media channels that have no audience. So the channels that really have felt the pain are out-of-home, cinema advertising, and print advertising. All of those channels have really shrunk. But what has happened at the same time is in-home media usage has skyrocketed. So you've seen TV viewership climbing, digital consumption climbing, social platforms, the streaming services, they've risen almost everywhere. And gaming also has grown dramatically, not to mention the recent surge in stock market gaming, what we're calling swarm trading at the moment. So what has advertisers done? They've adapted by following consumers. So they have prioritized digital. And when you look at inflation and exchange rates, the decline in advertising spend at the moment is anticipated to be worse than the decline we experienced during the global financial crisis of 2008. So although 2021 is starting to show small signs of recovery, WARC does suggest that this just is reflective of how steep the 2020 decline was. The data shows that your global advertising spend growth didn't recover for 8 years after the last recession. So a swift recovery, unfortunately, is highly unlikely. And returning to pre-pandemic growth rates may not be possible for a number of years. So as we come to terms with our new reality as advertisers and brand owners and people within the value chain that supports us in getting our message in front of customers, there's a lot of uncertainty. And that uncertainty is tied up with specifically with changing consumer behavior and with the fact that we're not yet out of the woods. Most countries have experienced a second wave of the pandemic. Some of us are now facing what could even be a third wave while we wait for the vaccine rollouts to progress. So it's a time of great uncertainty. But I think the key thing to remember in this time is that the basic rules do still apply. So if you'll forgive me, I'm going to just spend a little bit of time giving you an insight into what's in the mind of the marketer and how and why we make certain decisions. So we do need to understand that there will indeed be a recovery, although the recovery will come at varying rates for different countries. But it is important to really think about the industry and what we do in that period between now and the time that we are back. So well-known marketing research luminaries Les Binet and Peter Field have for a number of years analyzed this incredible trove of data in the massive IPA campaign data banks. And what they've done is they've looked at it from the context of evaluating the effectiveness and the business impact of different types of marketing campaigns. And based on their extensive research, they've proposed a very simple and very useful idea for how to look at marketing. And what they say is they're basically only two types of marketing. The first type is really focused on sales activation. So that's the type that delivers short-term growth. So running campaigns with the objectives to increase sales right away, promotions, various other types of short-term objectives does work, and obviously it works for different categories better than for others. But the problem with this type of marketing is that while it delivers short-term results, the results decay very quickly. So its effectiveness doesn't build or grow over time. So you spend the money, you get a return, and then in a month's time, you've got to spend the money again. You can't build on your investment. And that brings me to the second type of marketing, which is brand building, which if you do it well, can deliver long-term growth, substantial and sustainable business effects. And brand building also, while it's doing that, can deliver short-term sales lifts, and I've proved it in some of the brands that I've worked with. But the true value of brand building is how it compounds over time and how it influences future sales from future buyers. There are also, as you all know, two types of customers. They're customers who are in market and customers who are out of market. So that's really, the in-market customers are looking in your category and trying to find a vendor or a supplier or a place that they can actually buy your product or your solution right now. Your out-of-market customers don't yet know that they need you, so that they're not quite ready to buy from you today, but they might be ready when they have a need in 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, or even a year from now. So successful marketing is about finding the right balance. You want to harvest short-term demand from your in-market customers while you build the long-term demand amongst your out-of-market customers. You really need to find the balance for your business and do both types of marketing to grow a business. So you need to prime your potential buyers with brand messaging. And when you do that, you generally find your sales activation campaigns work actually a lot harder for you. So in doing that, you'll discover that the power of brand is that it lowers customer acquisition costs and it increases overall business efficiency. And that's the nirvana for marketers. That's what we're looking for, is we want to acquire customers, we want to retain those customers, and we want to grow their value over time. And the pandemic has caused advertisers of all sides to rethink the types of campaigns they should run. IAB data shows that 73% of advertisers have modified or developed new assets since the start of the pandemic. And over half of those are increasing the volume of their brand messaging, specifically talking to the mission of the business or the purpose, because they know that they need to build that long-term equity in customers' hearts and minds. And this chart supports that argument. This shows data from the Brand Z study. That's an annual study run by Kantar and WPP, and it's the world's largest and most credible study of brand value. The Brand Z database really includes data that is captured from over 3.8 million consumers, focused really on their attitudes to and relationships with over 17,000 brands across 512 categories in 51 global markets. So it is quite an enormous study. And it produces more than 5.3 billion data points, which Kantar uses to compute brand value using quite a complicated algorithm and analysis of both what the company's financial data is, overlaid with the impact of consumer attitudes and how those shift. And what this chart shows us is that over the past 14 years, from 2006 to 2020, the Brand Z top 10 powerful brands portfolio increased in value by 285%, while the S&P 500 rose by only 120%. And what's even more interesting for us today is it shows that strong brands are much more resilient during periods of market volatility. When turbulence drives markets down, what happens? Strong brands decline more slowly. And when markets recover, strong brands rebound more quickly. So you can see from the collapse and the reemergence of that top royal blue line, that the Brand Z powerful and strong brands around the 2008 financial crisis actually rebounded much more effectively and more quickly. But you can also see it from their rebound at the start of the COVID crisis. Unfortunately, the 2021 report hasn't been released yet. It'll be closer to the middle of the year. But from this report, which is 2020, we can see that during the first 5 weeks that were COVID weeks that were analyzed from February to March, when the MSCI World Index and the S&P 500 dropped 75% and 51% respectively, the portfolio of brands with the highest equity dropped only 37% before turning upwards. So there's been a lot more volatility in global markets since then, and there's more still to come. So this story isn't over yet, but it really does show that strong brands do provide a reliable, positive return on the money that was invested in building them. So what about consumers? How's their reality sort of prompted behavior change? This is a really interesting, fairly recent study from Kantar that looks at how different segments of the market have experienced the change wrought by COVID-19 differently. And I think the outtake from this is disruption is going to be with us for longer than anybody would like it to be. The very important thing that I took out of this particular research is that the change that people experience, or the change that people are demonstrating in their behavior over the COVID period, is driven by very different life experiences. So most people who have been economically secure have thrived during the pandemic, albeit with certain changes to their lifestyle. You know, they've taken up new hobbies, they've learned how to bake bread. I certainly did that. They've started gardening, or they've enriched their lives by learning a new language or some other new skill. But there are many, many people who haven't had that luxury. The frontline workers who are putting their lives at risk every single day because they have to earn money or they won't survive. And then there's another sort of segment that really are people who are simply terrified of the health risks due to various inherent vulnerabilities that they're experiencing or various other reasons. So they just won't go out, and they're obsessively binging on in-home media and news updates. And I think that what's really interesting at the bottom of that slide is that Kantar really believes, and this is specifically relating to the UK market, is that the behavior that we've seen and the changes that we've seen in 2020 are going to be very, very similar to those that we see in 2021, much closer to that, to the 2020 behavior, certainly, than to the 2019 behavior that was observed before. So it's very clear that consumption overall has shifted to the home. But what is really interesting in their study is that new consumption habits have set in. So we're observing this first major shift in shopping behavior for a decade. And you can see the data in the chart. The frequency of shopping trips has dropped, but the packs or the units per trip has shot up. And this translates into roughly 10% fewer shopping trips, but each basket being 20% larger. So what can we learn? If you have retail clients, what can you learn from that? And what can you do to help those clients leverage the new behavior? Some other really interesting outputs from the study was that the change consumption habits have led to massive change in volumes for leading retail categories. So only 1 in 10 of the best performing categories of the previous decade has remained in the top 10. And again, it is different for different segments of the markets. You can't make a generic sort of bet on that particular data. But it's really interesting to see what the people who are staying at home because they have to, and the people who are making the best of it, what their consumption habits are. I can tell you that the guys who are economically stable are certainly buying a lot more alcohol when they do go out for their shops than those who aren't. They're buying the basics. The other interesting thing, and certainly important to recognize, is that online shopping penetration has risen dramatically, anywhere from 11 to 20-25%, depending on the market. But it still only represents a small proportion of total retail spend. And again, that proportion varies per market. So how are marketers responding? This is data from a 2020 CMO spend report, research that was done by Gartner. Really asking, and this is in the midst of the pandemic, I was asking marketers what they believe the future looked like. And as unprecedented as certainly the pandemic effects were in the middle of 2020, what marketers, their point of reference was, and I think for many businesses, was the recession of 2008. So that revealed to them a pattern of business behaviors. They knew that there would be a period of initial response, and we've certainly lived through that. There would be a slower period of recovery, and I think we're slowly starting to inch into that period now. And ultimately, renewal would become a reality. And obviously, different marketers, different industries and categories have a different time horizon for that recovery and renewal period. So that influenced how CMOs were allocating their hard-cut budgets for the 2021 period. And the majority of them were relatively upbeat about 2021. And I think that as we said in a previous slide, is if you look at the term of the recovery, roughly 8 years from the 2008 financial crisis, I think maybe some of that confidence is going to be tested in the year or two ahead. So for many businesses, these are really tough times, and tough decisions are having to be made every single day. What's not surprising is that marketing budgets, and we're going through, but we've just gone through our budgeting cycle, are still very much under pressure. And there is intense pressure to make more use of digital channels, which are seen in boardrooms as more targeted, more easily demonstrable in their impact, faster and cheaper. You know, you can absolutely quantify the measurable return that you get on your marketing investment. And every business asks the same question, you know, what are we going to get back for every dollar, pound, or euro that we spend? So it's often a lot easier to focus on the allure of your short-term return and the efficiency of sales activations, rather than the potential greater sustainable profit that could be achieved by focusing on your longer-term brand marketing activities. And it's tough to convince an executive committee or board that you need to find the balance between. But what is interesting, and some studies have shown, is that it's becoming clear there are limits of digital channels. In other words, a couple of studies show that quite a number of people are reporting digital burnout as a thing that they're suffering from. So as much as we've changed, consumers still really crave that real, tangible, tactile experiences and that, you know, magic of human interaction that we all do deep down. So yes, there is certainly going to be a period where we get through the recovery and we start to renew, and consumers will, although a lot of behaviors have formed habits that will be sustained, there will be a time where we joyously embrace that human physical interaction, and we've got to be ready for that. What's also really interesting from the Gartner study is that the COVID-19 crisis has shifted CMO's focus from customer acquisition, purely customer acquisition, to a big focus on customer retention and growing customer loyalty. I think about 60% of the marketers surveyed in that study identified that those were areas that were huge priorities for their businesses going forward. And, you know, marketing leaders also said, and this is a sort of a related stat that I find really interesting, is that with the economic downturn, the one area that they were not going to cut their budgets was on customer data platforms. So marketers have certainly turned the corner in realizing the power of data and the importance of understanding their customer and being able to personalize their communication with their customer. And that bodes well for your industry. The next really interesting trend that we've noticed from a different study, again amongst marketers, is this increasing focus and attention being paid to local marketers. In a Nextdoor census-wide study, they found that 95% of marketing executives are seeing the brand advantages of acting local. And I mean, we've always seen it pre-COVID. You know, you do local area activations, and they are hugely powerful. But now more than half of CMOs believe that local communication has grown in importance since the pandemic started, while national communication is not delivering as much value. So again, there's an opportunity in this for people who can help to personalize and address communication to customers and prospects within a geo-targeted region. So an amazing 78% of consumers that were recently surveyed in a different report, Brightpearl, reported they intended to continue shopping online in the future. But what was a really interesting twist to that is they're not planning to buy from a single big tech vendor. They're actually starting to feel guilty for having often abandoned their local businesses and the independent retailers in their area. So they now want to support a wider range of brands via online shopping. So the challenge is there, excuse me, for these smaller businesses to make sure they meet customer demands where they are geographically. And that becomes an opportunity for you. Speak to your local businesses, work with them, help them to promote their e-commerce offerings, and you'll start to see that business growing. In terms of the data story, I just want to add this one last study. This was a study McKinsey did that looked at the insights, how the insights gained from data can be extremely powerful across all functions in the marketing value chain. But one of the most powerful capabilities of those insights is to enhance creativity. And marketing really does live at that intersection between art and science. You can have the greatest database in the world, but if you can't compose and design a message and emotional hook that really speaks to people's hearts, you have a much tougher job convincing them to do anything. So companies, McKinsey found that companies that harness creativity and data in tandem have growth rates that are twice as high as companies that don't. They found that marketers who they call integrators, so in other words, those who are able to find this intersection, this united approach to data and creativity, can grow their revenues at twice the average rates of the S&P 500 companies. So it really is important to leverage the knowledge and the information and the data you have about your customers in order to ensure that the messaging and the communication is relevant, targeted, and drives an emotional response. So with that little bit of an overview in mind, what I wanted to touch on are a couple of the interesting developments that COVID really has brought to the fore. The one being specific to your industry, the one being the growth in direct mail. And for somebody who's been in the direct marketing industry for well over 25 years, this for me is really incredible to see this medium come full circle. I've called it back to the future. Because when direct marketing started in the 50s, we never had, that's a little bit before my time, but we never had access in the old days to the data in real time to be able to tweak and adapt and personalize marketing content based on our understanding of consumer behavior. But what research has showing now is that physical mail in its many forms, which certainly has been on the decline for a number of years, has become a really effective channel in these very unsettled times. And it might surprise some people, and I know you've had a couple of other talks about mail, but mail has a very unique resonance. It's resilient, it's credible in consumers' minds, and it's unusual for a lot of people in sort of the millennial cohort and younger, because they're not used to having personally addressed mail appearing in their boxes. So mail does play a vital role and a more important role in the marketing mix, certainly as the home has become more central to people's lives, and it's demonstrating its continued value. I think what's really interesting from the research is that mail as a medium is delivering exceptional frequency and reach. So the average item of mail, according to research that the Royal Mail did, is interacted with 4.5 times, and reach can go up to 4%, which is incredibly powerful metrics when compared against some of the other channels that marketers have in their arsenal. Mail's also a very valuable tool for the digital marketer, as it has been shown to increase online traffic up to 70% year on year. Engagement with mail is higher than ever, almost over 90%. And the biggest rise of engagement, interestingly, from this Royal Mail study is with mail that came to people aged 18 to 34. And this is, as I said earlier, a little bit about the novelty of receiving post. So yes, the pandemic has given direct mail new life. And the USP of advertising mail is that it works like a poster in the home, as opposed to the more fleeting style of advertising on other mediums. It commands consumers' attention, and it delivers repeat exposure, and it actually drives commercial behavior. And that's what the data shows. It shows that that mail does absolutely drive on outcomes on websites and on mobile sites. Marketers understand that mail has always been powerful at driving traffic, both to physical and digital stores. And it also has the ability, because it's so tactile and creative, is to show and tell a really great product story. So right in consumers' hands. And any medium that grows business is important for us. So if you can go to your clients and show case studies and examples of how mail is actually delivering results and commercial action, you definitely have a really, really good opportunity to convert them. In fact, I sit, as I said, on the EMEA and the South African board of the Mobile Marketing Association, and we just at the end of last year judged our Global Smarties Awards. And what was fascinating to me was this integrated approach to media and the leveraging of print media with digital media that delivered such exceptional results. In fact, there were a couple of campaigns who used printed QR codes to drive people to websites or mobile sites or mobile apps, and they proved incredibly effective. And not just in Europe, but in sort of developing world economies, where mobile really is the only digital channel. It's, you know, it owns 98% of the available attention in those markets. So yes, it's exciting. I think that mobile certainly is signaling print is signaling its continued relevance as a medium. It's, as I said, it's tangible in an increasingly saturated digital world. So we are being bombarded and inundated with digital messaging, and we block it out. So yes, any medium that proves itself to drive behavior, both in terms of immediate response, but also in terms of cut through, and the longer term reinforcement of key brand messaging is always going to be of interest to marketers. So it is definitely an ideal support medium for integrated marketing communications and omni-channel campaigns. And the last thing I want to say about this is that it plays a role throughout the customer journey. So every media channel has its place in the customer decision journey and its own key role to play. You know, TV, for example, drives mass awareness. Email is great for quick notifications, or SMS for quick notifications, updates, and social media is good for brand engagement. But if you can find with your clients a way to strategically integrate mail into the customer journey, it can deliver exceptional impact. The other interesting area specifically that B2B marketers have been looking at for a number of years, and B2C marketers are starting to do so as they build up data, is marketing automation. And there have been some interesting innovations in programmatic mail, where online retailers are integrating variable data into their print partners, so pulling in e-commerce data for abandoned baskets. So it's amazing. You're a customer, you are online doing your shopping, you abandon the basket, and literally in 24 to 48 hours, you get a personalized discount voucher in your hands with a picture of the item from your basket, offering you an incentive to either go back online or to use the voucher next time you're in store. So that really sort of covers the direct mail arena. Where else is innovation happening today in your industry? Well, there are a couple of really, really cool examples of where printing is central to some of the core innovations in the marketing and communication arena. The one is 3D printing. And 3D printing really is the way that print and digital collide. It takes current technology and it leverages it in really innovative ways to create new technology. For instance, you know, the same heads as inkjet printers, but with a slightly different medium. So the opportunities in this medium are vast and potentially world-changing. And suddenly it puts a whole new slant and a whole new view on what is possible with distribution for some of your clients. You know, if you can just get the orders done online and the actual products printed 3D, the opportunities are actually endless. So, I mean, think of it. Certainly in Africa, the printing of PPE was, you know, we had universities and libraries across the country, across the continent, and across many, many different countries jumping in to help 3D print the assets that we needed to keep us all safe during the pandemic. But food, organs, I mean, there's just so much that you can do with this technology. Think about it. Think outside the box. Think how you can get involved. The next one, and I love this trend, is this large format print is really getting into printed decor. So you can print digital wallpaper, digital art, any form of data, even printing ceramic tiles through the digital presses. And it's broadening into so many other areas, and I love it. And I think it's incredible. And particularly at a time where people stuck at home, wouldn't it be nice to just kind of completely redesign this room that you're looking at every single day and that keeps on looking the same, partnering potentially with interior designers, offering it both to commercial and private, commercial sort of environments and private homes, working with artists to promote and produce their art, and you know, to offer home decor for consumers. It's just such a refreshing, such an exciting area, and I really do think there's opportunity there. The other thing that you guys know about so well is packaging, and I'm loving the innovation that is being driven in this area. I mean, the desire for well-designed printed packaging and label. In fact, it's one of the biggest growth areas in print today. And the ability to customize and print on this higher end flexible packaging, tape, labels, boxes, all of this is really speaking to the millennial mindset. And a lot of people are referring to it as the Amazon effect because of Amazon's ability to respond so efficiently to customers' needs. So yes, I think packaging is a hugely valuable area of the industry, and it can help companies to set their customer experience apart from others in a very flooded and overtraded market. In fact, there's one projection that I picked up that digital printing for the packaging market is set to grow by about $31.6 billion by 2024. So it's time to start exploring how do you do that differently. Another wonderful technology, which again, so exciting, is conductive ink. And this is the process of putting nanoparticles into ink and the ability to actually draw or print working electricity circuits on a range of different substrates, paper, textiles, whatever you can think of. This is probably one of the most exciting innovations coming down the line, and working with R&D teams, product design shops, you could really think about how do you distribute electricity using completely unusual surfaces. And then this just, I love this. I mean, we've been talking for years about how virtual reality and augmented reality are becoming more and more of a factor and presenting huge opportunities in our world. And if you look at the investment being made by the likes of Facebook and Snapchat in the virtual reality and augmented reality space, there has to be an opportunity for you to partner with these organizations down the road. And I love what Nintendo did. They were one of the first to launch a physical asset with a digital game, with the Nintendo Labo game kit. And what they've done is they use printed cardboard, costumes and tools to enrich the user experience of being in a virtual reality world. They talk about it as a toys to life concept. And on the one hand is the actual game and the console, and the other side of this is these multiple sheets of cardboard cut and printed with different colors and different shapes. And the game kits can be assembled combined with the console and the controllers, and you can create your own virtual world where the physical assets allow you to interact with the game software and vice versa. I mean, this is just the first of, I think, what is going to become many game makers invention, bringing the physical into the virtual and creating a whole new world for gamers. And as I said before, gaming is as a medium has seen one of the biggest growth spurts of any other medium. So start thinking about that, start talking to people. So I think I've given you quite a bit of food for thought. I just want to end on one idea, and maybe this is a little bit of a call to action for you. One of the heads of Ogilvy, Rory Sutherland, very wisely said that the greatest opportunities exist where every significant actor in a market segment all share the same set of self-limiting assumptions. A growth mindset approach is about expanding horizons, pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zones and looking beyond the conventional. We can do what everyone else is doing, so move towards consensus, or we can do what no one is doing and choose to be contrarian. Now, if we're wrong, it doesn't really matter if we're with or against the rest of the businesses in our particular category. In fact, it's it's particularly awkward if you wind up being contrarian and being wrong, because A, nobody likes you, and then you're also wrong. So that's kind of why most people prefer to stay away from contrarian ideas. It's safer. But what happens in the quadrants on the right is where it gets really interesting. We often assume that making the right decisions is going to guarantee success. But if all our competitors make the exact same right decision and we do the same, then we wind up with no competitive advantage. And at that point, we might as well be wrong. So the lesson from this is simple. You don't just want to be right. You want to be the only one who's right, so that you alone can capture all the upside of the decision that you've made. Remember, fortune does favor the bold. And at a time of global upheaval and change, now is the time to test bold experiments and see if you can pivot your business to become greater than it is right now. We need to search far and wide for ideas that are right, that are contrarian, and that are durable and will give us a sustained return over the long term. Those are the ideas that matter, and those are the ideas that will be of most value to you as you move forward in these really tough economic times. So just to end, I want to quote the incredible and amazing and very sadly late Sir Ken Robinson. He said, "We are deeply creative creatures. We have boundless capacities for innovation, imagination, and creativity." You do. So it's time you start thinking about how you're going to apply that to your business. Thank you so much for your time.
For maybe the first time in my life, I'm almost speechless.
Well, I got to say, the first session, I was going, everybody's going to go and commit suicide because this is, doom and gloom. But all I've seen is opportunity for what this session is all about. It's inkjet. There are so many inkjet opportunities. And as much as the market has declined and things have changed, there is no better time for inkjet. And I just feel this is for marketing service providers, for vendors. We need to educate marketeers about the opportunities that exist with our biggest hidden secret, because there's so many boxes that inkjet tick, and you've highlighted a lot of opportunity that we've got to make happen. I think that's the big thing. So very insightful. Morten, you got your...
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Let me be the devil's advocate here, right? Because when print is a communication channel, and if I should be a little harsh on you, everything you said is about communicating in relation to market a product or service. See, I'm the old-fashioned guy that actually like a book because it's a piece of art. And when you in the end of the slides show, for example, the home decor and some of the more leisure kind of print activities, which are the growing markets and segments of the industry, maybe that also points that some of the conclusions you came from the decrease in the market, to some extent, may also be because people are sick and tired of getting marketed to all the time.
Absolutely. Morten, that's very, very much, there's the digital burnout that I mentioned a little bit earlier, and it's become a reality. And you talk about books. I mean, I don't know if you can see, but that's
I saw that, yeah.
but that's a fraction of the books that I own, because I read on Kindle now. And so my behavior has shifted. And I'm just a market of one and an example of one. But I think that it depends. There's no consistency that everybody out there who's in the specific addressable market of a brand or a business will have responded to the pandemic in different ways, will have formed habits, new habits in different ways. And I think that what we need to talk to, or you need to talk to your print clients about, is about how you can enrich and enhance not just their marketing and their communication, and that happens to be my approach because that's my experience, but also how they can look at it in terms of their product offering and the value that they can add their customers to enrich the experience and cut through where, you know, people have really just had enough of the digital space.
And I agree on that as well, of course. And I think that it's always. I'm a little bit bold now. It's never fun to be kicked in the balls, but sometimes it helps a little bit to rethink, right?
It does. It does.
And
they call it the burning platform. There's always a reason.
Yes.
But I think what's interesting here is people to understand where a marketer's head is and brands think. I mean, a lot of this is not your opinion. These come from stats that are out there in the market.
Oh, yeah.
So when we're going to knock on these doors, you know, oh, we've got a inkjet press, and nobody cares. Go with a solution. Go with ideas. Have a toolbox of samples so we can show.
But Jean, I agree with you. But what I can't help think about, because if you go to some of the stats that Luisa has shown here, no question that this is true and that is based on thorough research. However, one mega trend that you see also in businesses is that proximity to, you mentioned that, but proximity to where you buy stuff, and that also means that some of the larger companies can be under a little bit pressure because people like to buy from the local farm, and the local farms are not asked in these surveys about how they market and what kind of channels they use. As you know from the UK, one of the larger impact on the pandemic was that all the bars closed, and in London it's very normal that you have people on the street handing out leaflets about the good bar offer Friday evening or just after work time. That is actually a quite big part of the printing industry for the smaller print shops in the UK, and that disappeared because you cannot see people, right? So I mean, the great thing about this presentation is that it should give you considerations into how to rethink things, both from a large scale, but also maybe to think that, okay, how can you dive under the radar and find the customers that are. Do you get my point?
Absolutely. There's opportunity and in every challenge, and yes, it's tough. The times are really tough, and we're all going through pain. But there are opportunities, and you just need to sort of step back and look at the market, look for data, look for insights around the challenges your customers are feeling. Look at the assets that you have, because you have so many assets, both physical assets and intellectual assets, and apply those in a different way, in a contrarian way, in a way that will set you aside from the competitors in your space.
And unfortunately, that has to be the last word. Thank you very much, Luisa. We have a next session. This is with Johan Kano from Screen, and he's actually talking about some of the flexible packaging in digital that you just showed with the pouches. So I think that for people that want to bridge from your session into Johan's session in just 2 minutes, should dig in. I have sent the link to the session here in the chat. Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation, and I look forward to talk to you at some other point soon, I hope.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody, and lots of luck. Bye.
Bye-bye.